Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's Reddit Quickie from the subreddit HFY, called Right and Honorable, written by Legal. The link to the original will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Duke Ronson Graves took another quick glance up through the mist shrouding the day in the odd light and tried to get a sense of his position of the sun in the sky. He couldn't be sure, but he had a suspicion that he had been waiting here longer than necessary. That his opponent was in fact late, possibly just for some mind game. Couldn't put it past his opponents to give themselves any sort of edge in a contest like this, but he simply had to put up with it. Bad manners didn't try and bring mind games to a physical contest. However, with the odd sky making it impossible to tell what time it was exactly, he couldn't voice his concern, lest he be wrong when the time that was set had not passed. Behind him, as usual, was his bannerman and courier. Win or lose, they'd ride hard and fast to spread word of what had happened. It was a day that he had taken part in 976 times before. He was well seasoned with days like this. It would be a day no different than any other, he thought. Though for this day Duke Ronson Graves would in fact be incorrect. This would not be a day like any other. This day would not be like any other day for him at all. Finally, he let a sigh out and he saw a wobble of a blue banner in the distance. Rising up slowly, at first then over the edge of the broken obsidian in the distance. "'Bout damn time," he muttered, under the breath as he watched the procession get closer. He frowned as he inspected them from a distance, however. No horses, not even a courier. He knew that the Inklands weren't especially wealthy, but surely they could afford a single horse for the courier. He didn't draw attention to it, however. It wasn't proper to mock or otherwise disparage one's opponent, especially now. He waited and watched them pick their way across the broken stones as they got closer and saw that the priest was amongst them. Not the one he expected, the tall, skinny one with the crooked nose. No, this time was a fat one with a bad wig. He thought priests weren't supposed to be vain enough to need something like a wig, but apparently this one was. However, as he looked at the figures growing closer, he realized there was something else amiss. He wanted to speed things up by watching over, but he was already inside the circle and couldn't leave until things were complete. The frick is going on here? He finally called out once they were in range of his booming voice. "Duke Graves, this is hardly the sort of speak that one should hear on a dueling day," the priest admonished as they got closer. "You think I use it lightly? Where's the champion? Why is there naught but a bannerman and a half-assed courier and a squire?" He waved his hands at the figures coming behind the priest. The courier looked spry and skinny, but in the way that lanky teens were. The bannerman looked older and his skills themselves, and he was able to keep a standard aloft. But the squire, he couldn't be older than 13. What little armor he was wearing looked like it was ready to fall off in the slight breeze. "The champion is here, as was foretold," the priest said with a wave of his hand. "That's not a champion," Ronson insisted. But him and his compatriots began to nervously shift side to side. They'd never seen a lord as this incensed before. "He is," the priest insisted once more. "Get into the circle, son." "Don't," Ronson growled out at the boy who stepped into the circle, and the runes around the two began to glow. "Now look at what you've fricking done," he growled out as he tossed his hands into the air. "I'm going to have to pay for this nullification now, aren't I?" "There will be no nullification," the priest growled back. "Everything is right and honorable as it should be." "No, it fricking isn't," Ronson cried out. "Boy, what kind of sick fricking joke is this? 'Twas your father I summoned to this challenge, not you. Where is he?" The boy before him nervously adjusted his helm and tried to look the towering warrior in the face. Well, my lord." "My lord, we're supposed to be of equal rank in the sacred circle, boy. Don't call me my lord. First of all, it would be your grace, but don't use that either," Ronson raved. "Oh, what should I call you then, Ronson just glared at the pathetic excuse for a champion before him. "In all his years, just call me Ronson, boy. Least I could do is let you speak to me by my given name. Your father, where is he? Insisted. Consumed by the plague, your Ronson. The boy looked away as Ronson's shoulders slumped a bit. Oh, it was all that he could say at first, but he could have older sons. When I sent the challenge 2 months ago, I had a list of all approved members of the family who might act as a champion, should the need arise. Your name wasn't fricking on it. Someone had sent word I would have nullified this day. Why wasn't I told? Plague, the boy muttered. Your father had a chief man of arms, did he not? Why wasn't he given a temporary title for the ceremony? You can't tell me that he hasn't been done before. He wagged his finger, not at the boy, but at the priest. The estate was lacking the proper funds for such a title, the priest explained. Are you telling me that because the family had hit hard times due to the plague, that I have to kill one of the few remaining children? What would his mother think? As he blurted that out, he saw how the boy wouldn't catch his gaze. Nor the courier, but the old bannerman in the back with his mouth set in a deep frown. He was glaring hard at Ronson, harder than almost any man he'd seen glare at him before. Almost. No, are you telling me that this is the last surviving blood of his line? And you wouldn't grant his man-at-arms a champion title, but for a single day? Everything has to be done the right and honourable way. Even as the priest said that, the book hanging from the iron chain around his neck began to glow. No! You stop this now, Ronson shouted. According to the most ancient and holy scriptures. All around them the smaller stones and shards began to rise up, vibrating in the air. Enough, Ronson shouted. A day of Duel has been foretold. It was supposed to be a sacred moment, one that Ronson usually relished. But not this time. Not like this, he screamed out and kicked the edge of the ruins, but his foot bounced back in the circle that rose around him and the boy. Do you, Lyle Morsemouth, first of the name, champion of the Inklands, accept the burden upon you as the right and honor demand? The priest's eyes were growing white now as he channeled the ancient text. Don't fricking do it, Ranson pointed at the ball. Don't you fricking do it. You must, sire, the courier behind him begged. Child, we spoke of this. It must be done this way. It is only right and the honourable way. The priest said, breaking from the tradition, and his voice faltered for a moment. Lies! There must be other ways, Ronson bellowed out, but the boy gulped. I accept this challenge in the right and honourable way. The blue ruins around the boy's half the circle grew brighter and still. Now you've fricking done it. Ronson's lungs were starting to burn with the amount of air that he needed to keep yelling at everyone, but he managed. Do you, Ronson Graves, first of the name, eat crap? Frick this, Ronson screamed. Champion of the Valley of the Sun, the forest of ruin and rain, the plains of snow and the plains of Neshtvili, and the infinite steppes, Ronson just screamed wordlessly in frustration, accept the burden as right and an honor demand. Ronson seethed, teeth clenched tight as he glared at the priest. I'm not saying it. Then you would forfeit your duel, the priest reminded him. I'm Duke Ronson Bloody Graves. I haven't forfeited a duel in my entire life, he raged. This is not how it's supposed to be done. This isn't the way. Do you accept the burden as right and honor demand? You must answer now, or your challenge shall forfeit. As the priest said, the Graves could feel the tightening in his chest. The stones around him, normally bright red of his colours, began to turn black as he grasped out once more before finally caving. Fine, damn you, yes, I accept this challenge in the right and honourable way. With that, his chest immediately felt lighter. The ruins snapped to bright red, and the air above him and the boy cracked for a moment, and an invisible field between them had been fading away. Then let the contest begin, and the fight shall be conducted in the right and honourable fashion. The priest finished. Ronson simply drew his sword and stomped forward while the boy drew his. Ronson didn't even bother with his shield as he swung with a single hand. Batting the boy's shield away first, the boy backed up, but was soon pressed against the wall, ruins behind him. His family sword raised up before him, which Ronson knocked out of the boy's hand, and another strong swing. Yield, the boy cried out, but Ronson just grabbed him by the shoulder, shoving him down to his knees. You can't, boy, not here. This is all I can do for you. The boy looked up at him in a sort of terror that he hadn't seen in a very, very long time. A time when battles were waged between armies and not just champions. A time when the rivers ran with blood and the corpse walkers could eat their rotten fill. He tugged the boy's pitifully fitted armor aside and guided the tip of his blade down between the shoulder and neck and into his heart. A bright red flash of crimson blood came bubbling out, steaming slightly in an odd mist in a terrible day. The boy tried to say something as he looked up into Ronson's eyes, but all that came out were bubbles of blood before the light drained from his eyes, and the small body collapsed back against the black stone. More blood came pouring out of the wound, slowly filtering into the cracks between the rocks as the ruins faded around them. The priest raised his hands, and that chained book around his neck grew brighter. So it was to be written, so it shall have been wrote, a duel completed in the right and honourable way. The priest closed his eyes and his mouth, and the white faded from them, and Ronson could hear the final sizzle of the ruins around him going out. "No, it wasn't," he said quietly, almost too quiet to be heard. Almost. "Duke Graves, while I can understand your concern, it is beyond our hands of mortals. We both know this. You are angry, this is acceptable, but the ritual has completed in the right and honourable way. Your anger doesn't change that fact," the priest said in a slow shake of his head, as if explaining a message to a child. "It was not right, and it was not honourable." Ronson growled out as he finally looked away from the boy and up to the priest. "It was not beyond the hands of mortals. A title could have been granted. Damn the price. Ha! Damn the price. You would have us risk the wrath of a celestial over a single boy. A single bloodline. If it was written, then so it shall have been. It was his will, his plan. Clearly, this was for a purpose." The priest shrugged. If he had done something else, if he had looked sad or angry or anything, Ronson might have reacted differently. But instead, he stepped out of the circle with his sword pointed at the priest. His plan? What the freck sort of plan calls for the death of a mere child at the hands of a veteran? What sort of frecking plan is that? A child who watched his entire family get consumed by a plague. A child who had no freaking fundamental understanding of why he was here or what would happen to him. What plan is that? As he approached, the priest began to back up, gripping the book around his neck and raising it like a shield. "Duke Graves, you're stepping beyond your bounds, even for one such as yourself, to even raise a blade to a man of the word. What? It isn't right. It isn't honourable." Ronson screamed. "You don't get it, do you, priest? You've ruined me. You've obliterated every fibre of my existence here. I lived my life in a right and honourable way. Every single damn day of it. 977 times now that I've conducted a duel and won. That's 977 lives that I should have carried the burden of upon my shoulders. Better mine than some poor pig farmer who has a spear shoved into his hands and told to jam it into another pig farmer marching under a different banner. That's what I told myself. That's how we ended the war. That's how it all came to be. I was there." The priest continued to back up, with his foot caught on a broken obsidian boulder scattered around, and cried as he toppled over backwards. But Ronson just kept walking forward, sword aimed now at the priest's whimpering, and tried to crawl away from him, like a worm. Worse than a worm. The word is not broken. Everything holds true. "You can't do this, Duke Graves," the priest gasped out. "All that honour, all that righteousness, stripped away from me," Ronson ranted, ignoring the priest's pleas. The other assembled people just watched, horrified and terrified in the sort of way that kept them from moving to help or hinder, transfixed but by what they were watching. Taken by a single duel that you had me kill a boy. A boy, Ronson screamed. "Why, the word, the pact." "Countless lives have been spared in agony of war, Ronson," the priest called out. "You saw it firsthand. You were there. You knew the horror. Why would you break it now? Why?" The priest tried to reason with him as he continued to scrape and scramble over the rocks. "Because you don't freaking get it. Neither did I until now. If they were willing to do this to one boy, then it's not just one boy. It's not just one family. They're willing to do this to us all. This is the right and honourable way that they gave us. It is not right. It is not honourable. It is a farce, a mockery, a lie sold as a promise to hold us back. So freck 'em, and freck what is right and honourable. Ronson screamed as he finally plunged his sword down through the book and chained the priest's neck, and then through the priest himself. The fat man gasped and screamed, and the blade sank into his chest. Once again the blood bubbled up, soon spilling up around the body to seep into the cracks of the otherwise pitch-black rocks. The field was silent aside from Ronson's ragged breathing as it leaned over the dead priest. He panted for a minute, and then he straightened up, putting his sword free with a jerk. Then he pointed at the boy's courier. "You, the deed is done. Tell your people that I am the new master, and tell them to raise all banners, or the regiments are to rise once more." Sir? The lanky teen gasped in confusion as Ronson's own courier approached on foot. "Your Grace, the banners haven't been raised in— I freaking know how long it's been," Ronson bellowed. "I'm not even sure if they know," his courier started. "They had freaking better, otherwise what the hell am I paying my sergeants for? You go as well. Now, the rest of my lands. Raise the banners," he waved. "Which lands, Your Grace?" his courier asked nervously. "All of them," Ronson screamed with all his strength that he had left, which finally startled the courier enough to turn and run, jumping onto his horse and digging his heels to get it going. The lanky teen as well turned and began to run. The two bannermen began to slowly approach him then, their sacred task still to keep the colours aloft. Aren't you going to follow, sire?" the bannerman asked. The old one who had been with the boy wasn't speaking yet, but he was glaring at him anymore either. "I'm going to bury the boy first," Ronson exclaimed. "Not see him to the temple, sire?" the bannerman asked nervously. "I'm going to bury the boy," Ronson insisted. "Here, but it's obsidian, sir. You have no tools with you," he mentioned and looked around. "Then I shall use my hands," Ronson answered simply. He sheathed his sword and looked around for a place that might be better start digging. "You there," he waved over the boy's old bannerman. "I don't suppose you've been in a siege before, have you, old-timer?" "I have," the old man muttered in a voice dry and dark as the obsidian around him. "Good. I'll have need of a good sieger soon. I can train men to fight in a field, but a siege? You need to live that," he nodded. "The capital, then?" the old man asked. No, I won't need a siege for that. If it weren't for the debt I owed his father, I could have replaced him long ago. But that doesn't matter now. I'm not doing things the right and honorable way anymore. Not like that. He will join me by choice or by force, but he will join me." He felt the cold as the misty day around him seemed to cut through the sudden wind. "What's your plan?" the old man asked. "I gather my banners and march on the capital, gather his banners, and then we march straight to hell. I have need for more allies. For once that is complete, we march on heaven." He looked at the sky then. The mist might shroud the sun from his direct gaze, but he could feel the warmth upon his face. Even from this distance, could the inverse be true then? From this distance, could they feel his hate? Did they have any idea what they'd done? He didn't know yet, and while he knew that he'd find out soon if he had work to do. So he dropped down to his knees and took a hold of the rock beneath him, slowly twisting and jerking to pry it free from the dirt. That was all to come later. First, he had to bury the boy. It was the right and honorable thing to do. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to support the channel or the author, all the stuff is down below. And as always, I hope that you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next story. Cheers.